You know, one thing people don't really understand, they don't get, is that alcoholism, alcohol use disorder, is not a moral issue and it's not a character issue. Someone does not have a bad character because they have this particular malady. And by malady, I mean it's a mental health disease and it starts slowly and it can manifest it into something much deeper. Now, the stories that I tell about my wife, Amanda, who I was married to for 25 years and succumbed to the disease 4.5 years ago, people get confused as to the stories that I tell because they're very disparaging on the surface, and yet I tell them to expose this disease and to bring it out of the closet. So when I tell stories like she got drunk, drove through the front of the house through the garage door, smashed up her car, my car, and then I had to get her upstairs into the bed. The next day, she had no memory of it, and she asked me what was wrong with the garage door. Did somebody drive through it? Those types of things. This is not a character issue. This is the end result of years and years of abusing alcohol and suffering from this very tragic mental health disease. You have to realize there's a big, big difference between the person with the disease and the person themselves, and there's a separation. I talk about the person with the disease and rarely talk about the actual person, so people get confused and they just think I'm being angry and judgmental and like I'm filled with animosity and that I need to move on. I get comments like that all the day, which is really nothing to do with what we're doing here. Amanda, as a person, was a very sweet, empathetic, loving, kind, intelligent person. She was full of life. When she walked into a room, she kind of became the center of attention. She was full of self-esteem and had the ability socially to really envelop a room. She had these piercing blue eyes, and her kindness always came through. We had our own insurance agency for a number of years. We sold senior products, worked for many different companies and with many different companies. And she had the ability to kind of wrap people around her finger, but it was very genuine. She wasn't there necessarily to talk about the product. She would sit down and get to know you as a person, which I think a lot of people really appreciated. So she was very kind and empathetic and genuinely caring to the people that were in her life, which is a big part of it, which was always very confusing because the alcohol was, created a completely different type of person and personality. But it was the alcohol and it was never her. So whenever I get comments like "you're disparaging wife, why don't you just let her rest in peace? Why don't you just move on? Why are you talking about this? You keep dragging, all this horrible stuff from the past back out into the future, and you're airing your dirty laundry on social media." And unfortunately, nothing could be further from the case. You need to talk about this disease because it helps other families, it helps other alcoholics. It's important to resonate these stories because it resonates with so many other people. So many other people go through the exact same things or similar issues than what I'm talking about. And ultimately, that's what an AA meeting is, a smart recovery, Life Ring, Women for Sobriety. This is what group therapy does. You have somebody that stands up in front of the room and they tells their story and really it's a very vulnerable position to be in, but it's also a very strong position because by telling your story, by reliving your story and exposing your story, it's a vulnerability that it resonates with everybody who's there, and you grow from it and you evolve from it by no longer being fearful of that story and of those happenings. So if you take fear out of the equation, this is how you grow as both an alcoholic and as a family member to an alcoholic. This is how you grow. This is how you get past it. This is how you move on. And this is how you are able to live the rest of your life. Rather than keeping it as rent in your head, you deal with it, you learn from it, and you move on. And this is such an essential part of why I do this and why the drive to explain the situation and and how it affects people. So to sum up, alcoholism, alcohol use disorder is not a moral issue and it is not an ethical issue. Anybody who says that simply doesn't know what they're talking about, and their ignorance is showing. They either haven't had the experience or they're filled with their own reactionary emotions and have not had the ability to delve into the history of why that person is drinking. Maybe they had a hereditary disposition, trauma, family culture, peer pressure. There's a whole plethora of different things that can cause it. Character issues is, I mean, no one wakes up one day and says, you know what, I want to be an alcoholic and that's my goal. It's not how it works. I hope that makes sense. And again, I have a complete coaching program. Link is in the bio. Set up a Zoom call. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour, and we go do a deep dive into what's going on with you and your family. The call is free. The course is definitely not. We spend about 9 weeks, and then we have a whole course for the family. It's to educate the family and to get really set up a blueprint for the rest of the alcoholic's life. And we try to create a situation where it's us, we're going to get through this together as a family because it's a family disease. And again, thanks so much for listening.